Hey Homeworthy, I'm Krysta from Kipling House. Welcome to my home here in St. Paul, Minnesota. Come on in.
This summer, spend the hottest months of the year in style with Homeworthy as we visit the most extraordinary homes around the world. From the sun-soaked shores of the Hamptons to the classic beachfronts of Nantucket to the vibrant courtyards of Morocco, be sure to subscribe to Homeworthy's summer series to make every day feel like a vacation. You're watching Homeworthy, where we believe every home has a story.
My name is Krysta Gibbons. I am the senior designer with Kipling House Interiors based here in Minneapolis, and you are at my own home in the Twin City of St. Paul, Minnesota. We actually built this home, which is very unique because it's in a almost 125-year-old neighborhood. We lived in the neighborhood just up the street and fell in love with it. It was one of those moments when I was much younger, almost 12 or 13 years ago, that we were very lucky to find a home in the neighborhood. Which is unique because not many people get in this small little pocket. There's very few homes. They have people that live here for a very long time. Some of the houses have only 2 or 3 owners. And we were very lucky to find the fixer-upper of the neighborhood. And we did just that, fixed it up for a very long time before the opportunity came about for a chance to build in this neighborhood, which I never thought I would do as a lover of old houses, but just couldn't pass up the opportunity to build in a neighborhood that we really loved. So we built the house about 2 years ago. So when we started the process of designing this house, it was incredibly important to me that the house remain true to the neighborhood. And it was a very tight footprint that I wanted to maximize as much as possible. I needed to get all of the function and the beauty that we get to pour into our projects, but on a smaller footprint in the city. So we started from the inside out. I drew the floor plan, which was very specific to my needs because I have a family of 5. I have 3 young girls. And our older home that was in the neighborhood, which we moved from, while I loved all of the quirks, it was a Dutch colonial, it was from 1924. I hated the basement laundry. I hated the detached garage. So I had this unique opportunity to have all of the beautiful, wonderful things of an old neighborhood, but the function of today's family. So when we set out, there was things that were incredibly important to me from the floor plan perspective. Obviously, every kid needed a bedroom, which was also unique to our old home. So we did 5 bedrooms, many bathrooms for all of the girls that I have. I always joke that the reason we designed and built this house was for mirrors and closets, walk-in closets, and the laundry room upstairs was incredibly important to me. It is adjacent to actually my closet and an attached garage. So starting with those kind of really exciting things from a new house perspective, those where I knew I needed to have those things, but then the actual floor plan of the house, I wanted it to feel like an old house. So when you walk in the front door, the dining room is at the front. It's a formal dining room. It's the place where you get to push a little bit creatively, and it can be extremely dynamic. It can be a wow moment. From there, the rest of the home certainly is more open than older homes, but it is very true to an old house style in which there are designated rooms. And that was important to me, again, to keep the character of what would have been an older house, but also as a designer, it's the opportunity to start and finish finishes. And for instance, in the kitchen here, I have my tile that goes into the grass cloth in the great room that goes into another room with a different wallpaper. And as much as open concepts seem wonderful from the function standpoint, you lose that opportunity for delineating each room from a color and material standpoint. Here we are in my great room, which is the only living room / great room in this house. It was important to us to have one space that as a family, we could be close to the kitchen, that we could entertain. But it is a space that we do all of our entertaining. So it was very, very important to me to maximize the amount of bottoms that could find a place to sit in this room. So we have the sofa, the 2 lounge chairs, and then I have just kind of a sweet little chair in front of the fireplace, 2 ottomans that can be pulled up. was a table that we converted into a large ottoman, so if need be, people can perch on that. And then there's these two lower chairs, which are unique because they're small in scale. I love a slipper chair. A little dose of leather is welcome in any space. I think it also brings some masculinity to the room, which we needed. But they are specifically this style because they're probably the last place that most people are going to want to sit the longest amount of time, because the slipper style. But I had them here because they can still be in front of what is our television. Right now it's fired up as art. It was so important to me that this room not have the focus on the TV. And I was not going to put the TV over my fireplace. So the room was very much designed for this multifunction, but two opportunities for viewing. First and foremost, I wanted the fireplace, that hearth kind of energy, but we do watch TV. It is a reality. So it's here, but it's very, very demure. And I love the idea that when guests are over, it doesn't look like a TV. They're sitting here. But then when we want to have perhaps a Super Bowl on, and there are a lot of people, I can easily move these chairs. So the room was very much about getting a lot of bodies in here. We also had to think about where the Christmas tree was going to go. So if you're wondering, we put it right here. This little chair and ottoman moves out of the way. So it's our Christmas room, and it's just a great room. I will say the sofa is incredibly comfortable. It was one of the first fabrics I chose in the scheme. I really wanted a very loud sort of moment for the sofa. And it is upholstered in a very durable velvet it's an inside out fabric. So my kids do sit on this, but I will say the minute they sit on it, those down cushions completely smush. So right now they're very plumped. The reality is this is life, and everything looks perfect, of course, when we're taking photos and before the guests come in. But as soon as they sit down, they see the signs of that. And I love that. I want everyone to use this room to smush in, to pile on, and it's where we certainly live in our great room. Some of the fabrics that inspired the room are the Lee Joffa fabric, which is an iconic fabric, as well as this is another Lee Joffa, the Rapallo, which in the design trade, there's just a few fabrics that just will never go out of style. And those are two that I felt were important to see in the room. And then the embroidered drapery was really one of the springboards as well. It's a really cool repeat stripe that I just fell in love with. And I loved the sort of graphic nature. There's sort of a boho note in it. The house is very colonial. There's a lot of Southern influences because I was raised in mostly Georgia, but this felt a little edgy in a cool way, which I think is something we do at Kipling House. Is that really that blend of traditional, little modern notes that will surprise you, some romance, layered, but then a moment like a boho kind of embroidered stripe just brings a different sense of energy to a space. And then lights in this space, we just have a simple chandelier and then sconces over the fireplace, but everything else is low lit. So when I say that, I mean lamps. The overhead light is honestly very rarely turned on. We really like the low lighting. You'll see that all of the lamps in the room are covered in fabric because I can't just leave a lampshade white anymore. So that's kind of the fabric story in the room. And all of the fabrics, when I could, were durable inside out, but if they're not, they're gonna get spills. There's mohair on the ottomans, it's gonna happen. And I think it's important to live with beautiful things, and I'd much rather live with beautiful things than being restricted when pulling fabrics. So the fireplace was actually kind of an afterthought. In designing all the cabinetry in the house, I got to the fireplace and I felt a little exhausted. And so I did a little kind of research and digging and realized that when you go into an old house, yes, the fireplace was incredibly important, but they weren't designing these overly elaborate mantles in the house of the era we were trying to emulate. This is not a grand estate. We were going for, a 1920s colonial energy. So what they would do is they would just find material on site, and one random worker would, or craftsperson would figure out how to put those elements together and make an appealing fireplace. So it's very simple. It's nothing that, it's not competing with some of the other elements in the room. It's meant to kind of just be quiet. But also what's important is the mirror over the fireplace. I had actually bought while I was in college. It's a Flemish mirror. It's incredibly large. It's incredibly heavy, to the point where I could never find another place for it in another house. And I knew that when we moved into this house, it finally got its moment and got a place, because in the rest of my houses, it was in storage. So I had it for 15, 20 years before it finally got a spot over the fireplace mantle. So nothing overly fancy with the fireplace, but it keeps us warm, and every house, I think, should have a fireplace. And in this house, which is funny. We have 2 chimneys on the house, and neither one is functioning because this is a gas fireplace, but chimneys are beautiful. So that's the great room. All of our projects start with the kitchen. It's not something we ever talked about as a firm, but they just happen to be where we start our design process. And now I can look back and understand why we do that. It is the heart of the home. Today's family spends most of their time as a family unit in their kitchen. And this project was no different. I started with the kitchen. Unique maybe to others, I do love to cook and needed my kitchen to be incredibly functional. But what I was really excited to do with my kitchen, because it was open, and again, I'm fighting the urge to be open concept and new. I wanted it to feel old, but it is open to the great room. But I really wanted my kitchen to have some sort of historic reference. So this was spurred from a trip that I took with my mother, who is very much the person who inspired me to become a designer, and my oldest daughter. And the 3 of us went to Newport, Rhode Island. And it was right during the process where we were laying out the kitchen in comparison to the other spaces. And I was kind of kicking around ideas in my head as what is the kitchen gonna be? And while in Newport, I found myself in the kitchens of these grand mansions, and I loved those spaces even more than the grand, entries and ballrooms. And there was one specific mansion, the Marble House, which was not as notable as perhaps the Breakers, which is the one that kind of everyone knows about in Newport. It was a little more subdued, but just really appealed to me. And there was a hood that encapsulated the entire cooking surface. So it was this grand hood, and they had it so that they could take the exhaust in terms of a fire, which would break out often. This huge hood to take all of the heat and the gas. And I loved the scale of it. And then in addition, they had the walls that were fully tiled again, and that was because of heat and smoke and in case of fire, so that at any moment they could take out a hose and truly spray down the kitchen. So those 2 details really spoke to me. And when I saw that, that's kind of really what got my wheels turning. I wanted it to feel like somewhat of a nod to a grander home of yesteryear, but the truth is, like, this is a humble home, and we could dial up some of the details of my kitchen, but I loved that I could infuse kind of a story of an old kitchen. So off of the great room in the house is the other great room, the kitchen. Our kitchen is open to the great room, as I mentioned before. It also has 2 entrances to our mudroom, and then back to the pantry, and then off to the veranda. So again, very much the hub of our home. The island is very important. I wanted the feeling of an old work island. We do have 5 in our family. So I wanted a space for all of us to sit. And this is really where we sit and eat dinner. So all 5 of us can sit at the island. And on the back side of the island, you'll see the sort of the idea of like a baker's table. And I inset this really large chunk of marble. I even had the fabricators round the edges, because you would have seen these slabs of marble and they would have been worn down to the point where they would have had, kind of a bowl started to be created in the center. So I really wanted this sort of soft edges to make this feel patinaed. But I still needed function. So on the back side, this sort of baker's island, you'll see, while I wanted it to look like a table, I still needed the function. So I made the idea like this has been just inserted into an island. And I am a fanatic for organization. So I went and measured every single appliance that I had, and bell and whistle, and all of the accessories that I use for cooking. And I love having them right here, sort of across from my cooking station. Other kind of fun things in the kitchen, little details like adding this ledge at our appliance so that we can have the salts and oils and things. Over by my sink, which I was very lucky to get the largest one I could find, a very large farmhouse that I can sit out at the window and look outside. And then next to it, this is one of my favorite things that I did, and I've done this now in every kitchen I've designed since then. If anyone has kids that's watching this, you'll understand and empathize with the nemesis that is water bottles. And there are lots of them, and they keep inventing new ones. To the point where actually the Stanley was not a thing when I designed the house, and I had to even modify this after. But this is the best thing I did, and this is my gift to you, Homeworthy. This drawer is a water bottle drawer, and all of my water bottles go in here. And then right above it, all of the tops and the straws and the lids. Like, this will save It's your sanity. It does for most moms. So this is the kitchen. The cabinetry is not white. It's a kind of a dirty putty tone. The color story for the kitchen was based on a visit to La Mercerie in New York City. Marita, my partner, and I were in New York for work and went to La Mercerie. And I mean, I had a moment where I had to kind of stop and pause and like take in what was happening. My senses were on overload. It was a religious movement. I really felt like I had landed in the most beautiful space, and I tried to infuse some of that energy into the kitchen. So the blue tile of the wall on the walls, that putty color on the cabinetry, just that real mix of finishes and antiquities. Nothing too precious, but this nod to somewhat of a European bistro, which I've kind of found through the lights. That's really where the color story came from in the kitchen. And because I have such a colorful home, the kitchen wanted to rise up to that. I didn't want you to end in this white, stark space after coming through, a foyer that has a checkerboard floor, a muraled dining room, a very colorful, bright blue sofa in my great room. The kitchen didn't want to feel like forgotten and sterile. So that's really what drove the color story. La Mercerie, a trip to Newport, and the rest of the spaces in the house. So from our open kitchen, I did need a lot of additional function because I don't have any uppers in this kitchen. It's just really the cooking utensils and all the cooking equipment. The food needs to go somewhere. So if you walk through this auxiliary space, which is actually access to the veranda as well, which is a second dining room and living for us. We have a lot of our meals out here when it's warm enough in Minnesota. And then into our pantry. So I have two pantries in the house, one for the food and the other for the booze. And this one is the food. So everything is very help yourself. There is a door. So if I have, things I don't want to expose to guests, although anyone that comes to my house knows that they're always welcome in this space. But this is where all the food is. This is where our coffee maker is, our toaster, our blender. It's a lot of function. I love that I have a window to the veranda. I can sit here and see the kids outside. And this was another kind of thing that I was neurotic about when designing these things, the countertop appliances, which drive me crazy because they are big and they are clunky, needed a place to live. So this room was kind of designed around, how do I get rid of all of that? Because again, I do cook. I do use all of those countertop appliances, but I love this room. I love that the tile extends in here. So it feels a little more rustic and well-worn. And it's just a lovely little room. It feels a little like Downton Abbey. I love this space. So from here, you come through the mudroom. My kids come in covered in snow into this space, which is the mudroom. Each of the kids has a locker where we store all of our, in the winter, it's got all of the, mittens and hats, and then out of season stuff above. Right now, all of our shoes are on the bench. That's because we have a puppy and he likes to chew them. So we're trying to save, the soccer cleats from Murphy. We have this drop zone, which is incredibly important in the houses we design because there always is going to be, where does the mail go? Where do the extra keys go? Sunglasses. So this is really like family hub central. And then below it, each of the girls has a drawer. And that's one of my favorite things because my kids will constantly be like, Mom, where'd you put this? I had this out. And I'm like, yeah, you had it out. And I put it away in your drawer because I don't like things out. But they all know if they can't find something, the first place to look is their drawer. And now even Murphy has a drawer in here too. So his treats and things can go away. But this room, highly functional, very important for any Midwesterner to have a mudroom. So from the kitchen towards the front of the house, we have this charming little, what we call the China room. It's just a small little space that holds all of our kind of entertaining ware. So the silver and china, chargers, things that we need for the dining room. And then adjacent to that is the butler's pantry. So this is where you come to make a cocktail. In such a colorful house, I kind of felt a little paralyzed when I came to the butler's pantry because I knew I really wanted that china room to be saturated in this delineation between the mural in the front of the house and the tile in the back. So the butler's pantry sort of kind of freaked me out when I was designing it because I had some writer's block, if you will. But then it came to me that I was going to blend the colors of the kitchen, which is this sort of putty color, with the running house white, if you will. And then I wanted their sort of jewel box. I'm not the first person to create that idea, but using the idea of mirrors. So we have the antique mirror on the cabinetry, and then I used a foiled paper on the walls and ceiling above the wainscoting. Countertops are slate, which is a more durable answer to soapstone, but incredibly lovely and veining and interesting. All the stone in the house is natural. I prefer to see a natural stone versus a faux, so this was no shortage of that idea. And then we have kind of some function again hidden. We've got the refrigerator for drinks. We've got a dishwasher also hidden in here. So come in here, get a drink, and then from our dining room, the dining room again is at the front of our house. I love this space because I got to use a mural, which was something that was a non-negotiable. I always knew that I wanted to have a muraled dining room. This mural was custom done for us through Paul Montgomery. And I took one of his patterns that he had done, but it was on a black background and the foreground was a little more stark white. So we custom colored it in this is Benjamin Moore Palmer Green. That's what this paper color is based off of. And we had this tea paper design also added to it, just to give it, again, a sense of patina. I love the color. You see it picked up across the foyer into my husband's kind of wing where he works from home. And then to contrast the green in the mural, the drapes are in this lovely blue, which you see picked up almost in every room, namely in the sofa in the great room. But I love this room. We have this incredibly almost theatrical light fixture. Again, when you do your house as a designer, you spend so many years with your favorites kind of in a drawer. And I had those. I had favorite fabrics, favorite light fixtures. And this was just a favorite from Suzanne Kassler through Visual Comfort. I have always respected her. She's an Atlanta girl like myself. And when it went in, everybody was very much worried that I was going to hate it and that I made a mistake. But I didn't. I wanted it to be this large. And it's one of those things, proportion is funny. As time goes on, we all get a little more relaxed in the rules. And I completely embraced the idea that this was a strong moment and I wasn't going to shy away from that. So I love this room. There's a piece of art on the walls by a local artist, Allison Johansson. And we had that commissioned after we moved in because as much as I love the mural and sometimes you get away without doing art, I really felt that we needed something, some tension against the muraled wallpaper. So I liked this modern movement in the artwork. And ironically, she lived in our neighborhood until recently. So that was fun when she delivered it and realized she used to be my neighbor. And then the last thing in here, which is important to note, is just a chest from my Aunt Dorothy. I have a lot of antiques in the house. My mother raised me to love antiques and antique stores. My mom is one of 12 children, 10 of which are my aunts. And she had this and she was getting rid of it. And it's just sort of a sweet piece that means a lot to me that I have some kind of family mementos mixed amongst the new pieces, the vintage pieces, the found pieces, that this is a family piece. And then off of our dining room is the foyer. So the foyer is obviously the first impression and it is adjacent to a lot of color. So I intentionally chose to have it neutral on the walls, but it's fully paneled. Again, one of those things that as a designer was in my drawer of when I build a house, I will have a fully paneled foyer. The floor is a mixture of a marble and two different kinds of limestones in this checkerboard pattern, just kind of an iconic old house moment to have a checkerboard entry. The stairs were our carpenter's kind of worst nightmare. To have a continuous handrail is something that was important to me. He got very creative and I really love the way that the stairs turned out. And the carpet on the stairs is actually an outdoor carpet that I had bound. This is one of the best tricks is find a really good quality. This happens to be Stark, made to look like sisal, but it's actually like I could take a hose to it, which is, I haven't had to yet, but I have a puppy, so that time will probably be coming. And then we just have a sweet little bench, a vintage mirror over it. And then the light fixtures on the ceiling are by Hillbrook Collection, who is the manufacturer of our garden shed, which is my daughter's playhouse, if you will. I got a little stuck on the light fixtures here because my original selection was discontinued, which is, we're no strangers to that in this industry, constantly having to pivot and find alternatives, but I happen to have loved the original selections and really grappled with it. And While she makes beautiful garden sheds, she also happens to make lighting. So I showed her a picture and we worked together to design these, and they were the first ever. They're now on her website, so she sells them, but they are called the Georgia, which is really fun because that's where I'm from and it's actually my oldest daughter's name. So love those. And then again, the paneling, the idea was to have this kind of rich material on the walls. You can see the front door from here. The front door is a moment. Our architect was incredibly talented, but he did us a disservice when he drew our house in that he drew this incredible front door, which was not a thing. It was a thing, for several tens of thousands of dollars. And so once we realized that this beautiful drawing would have a cost prohibitive door, I got a little, scrappy. And that's what you have to do when you're a designer and you get to design beautiful things, but you're building your own house and you need to, pedal back a little bit. So my husband and I went to a local architectural salvage, which we are very much blessed with here in Minneapolis, that goes into older homes and takes things that would have gone into a landfill. And we went through 5 floors of a warehouse, digging through doors and light fixtures and cabinetry and plumbing, only to finally get up to the floor of windows, which was terrifying, covered in glass. I mean, so many windows, just, card file style. And truly the needle in the haystack moment was when I found this actual insert, which is from a late 1800s home here in Minneapolis that was torn down. And the lattice detail, which we call this house the Lattice House. It's a Southern detail that I really wanted to see in the house. You see it in many places. You saw it in the lattice chair in the great room. You see it on the pillars in the back in the veranda. Tile details. The lattice is very much prevalent. This lattice, leaded glass lattice, was here from an 1800s house. And so we had it spiffied up by a local glass company. And there's an extra layer of more durable glass for the elements, and it was inserted into a brand new door. So this was a project that not only saved us quite a bit of money, was a fun experience, and nobody else will ever have it, which is really exciting for me. So that lattice motif you see from the front door through, we love how much light comes through here. The dog loves now that, he can kind of peek out from the great room and see through here. And the other thing about this foyer, which is really fun, is this sweet little lamp. We kind of think of it as like open for business because my husband's office is just behind here. So if the light's on, maybe don't come in the office. One of the other fun details about designing a house on a tight footprint is that I needed to eliminate hallways for hallways' sakes. So there's very few hallways in this home, and this is no exception. So I needed a way to access the office, which is my husband works from home full time. So we did this little up and over detail that the architect came up with, and it's one of my favorites. You see it similarly repeated upstairs. Just those different levels, those quirky details really lean into the idea that this was meant to look like an older home. So this goes up and back over into a vestibule again, which is painted the same color as our dining room. So the Palmer green that leads into my husband's sort of wing. So this is kind of his office impression before going into his private office. But I love that kind of detail of up to, down to get over into that space. It feels like a little bit like, can I come in? Can I not? And I just like that kind of quirk. So from the foyer leading back to the great room, there's a small anteroom. And actually this anteroom, when we first moved in, I just had painted, and then the 11th hour, actually it wasn't the 11th hour. It was probably a month or two after moving in. I just couldn't help myself seeing drywall. I have an aversion to it. Everything else in this house is layered in something. So I had to add more wallpaper. So this is just a fun little kind of pause space before getting to the back of the house, off of the paneling into the grass cloth wallpaper. And it's just a lovely Les Indiennes stripe. And this space then also leads to our powder room. So it's a little transition space between the front of the house being more formal to the more private spaces in the back of the house. So from this vestibule, we have our access to the basement stairs, which our kids use. There's another whole living area down there for them to romp around. And then this is our powder room. So again, another privilege of a new house is a powder room. I never had a powder room until I built a house. So I got to use one of my favorite Waterhouse wallpapers, which has a pineapple motif, which if you're from the South, means it's a sign of welcoming and hospitality. So I love that I got to use a little note of the South in here. Bone inlaid mirror, a chest, designed to look like a piece of furniture. I'm certainly not the first person to do that, but I loved getting to get kind of this handsome note. And then a separate kind of water closet space. So love having a powder room for the first time in my adult life. So from the main stairs, again, here's this kind of up and down moment that I mentioned. This is going towards the laundry room and then towards the private spaces, our bedroom spaces this way. There's this fun little spot. This was just an idea that I needed to have a mirror kind of upstairs. It's an old chest that I found at an estate sale, a really cool shell mirror, and a piece of art from Alexis Walter out of New Orleans. And then we have all of my daughter's spaces. So we can start in Birdie's room. So this is my youngest daughter, Birdie's room. And Birdie has her own bathroom, which I'll show you in a minute. Her favorite thing to tell everyone is that she's the only person in the house that doesn't have to share a bathroom, which is the truth. For whatever reason, my oldest daughter did not pick this room. And I think she regrets that because she does have a bathroom, but Birdie is going to be with us the longest. So her room, the idea was sort of a circus tent, but not overtly obvious. And you see that come into play with the stripes on the ceiling, all coming together to feel like a little tent. And the light fixture is also done in the same fabric with the stripes on it as well. And on the drapes, you can see that I lined the back of her drapes also in this stripe. So kind of that nod to like the circus tent that has the pull back. So idea being that the exterior would have been a stripe and the interior was the purple. So I didn't want it to be overly themey. When we moved into the house, Birdie was 6 years old, so she's now 8. And they do grow up, sadly, but she is my little girl and she let me kind of play up kind of the sweet notes. So we have the little elephants on the pillows, the butterflies over her bed. It's sort of this sweeter, it's certainly the most youthful room of all of my daughter's rooms, but I love that she was kind of here for it. And I do think it will grow with her. We'll have to make some changes over time, but it is a really kind of happy space and she's very proud of it now. And the fabric that is on the lampshades, you'll see picked up into her ensuite. And yeah, just a lot of really kind of sweet little moments. Also this desk chair. Again, this is kind of that, we have to see a little bit of something modern in every space. So this sort of Art Deco desk is speaking to that. And then this is just a sweet little desk chair that I had my upholsterer workroom put this detail on it, like a little dressmaker's detail. So loved the little feminine notes in her room. So her ensuite is very much in keeping with the color scheme of her bedroom. And you can see the fabric that was on the shades of her lamps here in this sweet little cafe curtain. That's also the same as the wallpaper. And the floor is just a really simple idea in using a 1x1 marble tile, but I turned it on the 45. So it looked again like that lattice detail that you see in other spaces in the house. And then her purple vanity, just little details, like we added this vinyl wall covering in here to create some contrast. And it's just a nice little space for her. And I'd like to think she keeps it clean because she does have the only bathroom in the house, but that has yet to be discovered in her 2 years in living here. So continuing down to the girls' bedroom spaces, again, down 2 stairs, a little quirky moments. This is the girls' lounge, and the room came about in the planning process because our space that we needed to get to the space that's over the garage, which has my other 2 daughters' rooms. So this room was too small to be another bedroom, but it's too large to just forget. So kind of while we were designing, I got really excited with this notion that they could have their own space to hang out. In the Midwest, a lot of kids hang out in their basements, which is great, but you're kind of subterranean. So I loved this idea that my kids could wake up in the morning, mosey out, plop on the sofa, watch their cartoons or whatever they're going to do. So this room is one of the favorites of the house, and not just for my kids. And then in addition to it kind of being this TV, let's be honest, scrolling area, we also designed in this day bed in this little space, which is actually a guest room when we need it. Kids can plop on here for a night. I put a charger station in the bookshelf here so that we can just put down some blankets and another friend can spend the night. But love this room. The girls love this room. The sofa is hilariously long at 10 feet, which means I can pile in so many little girls. And they spend a lot of time here. We have an old vintage, this is another Goodwill find. I love these little things. This is an old baker table from the 60s, found at Goodwill, and mixed among, some other kind of finer things like a Heather Chaddock fabric that we did on an IKEA cabinet underneath that hides kind of their games and things. I love the function of that. So this lounge is, it's just incredibly functional. And now that I've had to experience it, I really think it's a space that I hope more people think about adding to their own homes to give the kids kind of a zone that is all theirs, that's fun, but it doesn't keep them away from the parents too far. I mean, our ear is always kind of listening when they're in here. So off of this lounge, which is probably the reason that my oldest daughter decided to not take the ensuite room because she wanted to be close to the lounge, are my two older daughters. So my oldest daughter being almost 15 and my middle daughter 12. So this is, you enter the lounge, you've kind of entered like preteen zone. They each have their own bedroom and then they share a bathroom. So this is their shared bathroom, which luckily has not resulted in too many fights because they both have their own sinks. They have sort of their makeup area, so they can put their makeup on down here in the natural light, which I didn't have even until my 30s. And then a separate water closet and shower. So just showing that you can have a shared bathroom, but it doesn't need to feel like a shared bathroom if all the function is delineated accordingly. So off of their wing here, we can go into my oldest daughter's room. So this is Georgie's room, named after Georgia, but we call her Georgie here in this house. When we were designing it, she was in that stage where, she wanted things that were furry, and she wanted the bean bags, and she wanted the LED lights, which she did get the LED lights in here. But I was fighting her very much on the design process because I knew those things she would age out of. So we came to an agreement on this direction, and it's a great kind of feel. You walk in this room and it really does have almost an audible quiet to it. The walls and trim are all painted in the same color, which is this sort of muddy mauve color. And then we accented behind her bed, which I'm actually embarrassed I'm saying the word accent because I hate an accent wall, but this is different. So we found this space during framing. So the house was framed and the pitch of the roof afforded us kind of space behind the walls. And in walking through the house, it just was kind of killing me, the idea that we were giving up space for no reason. So I went back to the builder with the 11th hour with, a Sharpie on the studs and asked him to kind of recess her bed into this niche. And so there, and you had the opportunity for an accent. And it was really fun then, because then I'm like, well, wait, now I have a pillow, I can match it. And then that's how these things happen with designers. When things starts and we get a little bit crazy. But this is her sweet little bed niche. I love her little lamps that we did in the scallop. These are old 70s lampshades that I just had fabric applied to. It's one of my favorite fabrics for her room. And then we picked up on the accent color in her niche, and you'll see it in her closet doors. So Georgie has a pair of closets, one for, she has school uniforms, and the other for the Lululemon and swimsuits and athleisure that she'd rather be wearing over a school uniform. But the two closets really work. So she doesn't have the walk-in closet, but it works really well. And then each of my girls have a desk space. And for Stella and Georgie, my older two, theirs are built into the dormer, which is just enough space for them to pretend to do homework and probably talk on their phone. But I love that they have that. The idea is they can put their stuff here and it's just the right amount of space. Not too big, not too small. And so far, she is agreeing with me at the end of the day that we made the right choice to not do beanbags. So on the other side, before getting into Stella's, I have these little things. These are my girls' preschool art, which you have to find a place for those in every house. And it was really sweet to get to do it here. That was from when they were 2. So then we have Stella's room. So Stella is my middle, and comes with all the angst that a middle daughter does, but she's actually the most delightful child, despite it. She wanted her room to feel beachy. And again, as an anti-theme mom, that was hard for me, but I tried to kind of respect her wishes. So in doing so, we painted the room this very soft blue. It's called Quiet Moments by Benjamin Moore. And there's just little details that kind of attribute to sort of a beach energy. There's some photography from the coast of France over her bed in the burl wood, the little detail on the lampshades with the trim by Samuel and Sons. And this fabric, which you see on the wall, the shades, the window treatments, sort of has a feeling of a wave, sort of an abstract painterly wave detail. That was something that she picked. I did bring my daughters into my studio when we started the process and let them kind of pull all their favorite fabrics and start to build their own schemes, heavily edited by mom at the end of the day. But I wanted them to be part of the process. And Stella found this fabric and just really loved it. And so we ran with that. The other fabrics then, it was me kind of getting a little bit more of those designer things that I needed to see. So that was a push. And when I put the bed skirts on, I knew it was a mistake because now she hides everything underneath it, but I needed to see more of that fabric. And then just a little, these sort of beach ball pillows, which for her is incredibly appropriate because they also look like soccer balls and she is a big time soccer player. So she got the pair of twins. I think every house should have a pair of twins for sleepovers. I have two nephews. Just the times where you don't want to cram two people in a bed. I think every house should have one. So her room was the perfect architecture to house two twins, and she does have them. And actually there's been times where she's had to sleep in the other bed because I didn't get to get the sheets on in time or something like that. So I love having two twins in one room. I did always want to be a designer. I, as a child, would go to my friends' homes and without saying anything, of course, I'd come home to my house and start sketching their homes to create a better floor plan for their family to live. I never showed my friends these, but it would sort of drive me crazy when I would go to all of my friends' houses, these older houses or even newer houses, and they just never seem to function that well. And that is what my favorite part of being a designer is the space planning, the problem solving, the creating function. Obviously, creating a beautiful home does create a better quality of life, in my opinion, but at the crux of it, I really love getting into the floor plans. So as a kid, I think the writing was certainly on the wall, and my mother actually saved a lot of the drawings I had done, which she had to pull out one summer while I was in college because I was studying design, and the program was pretty rigorous, and I was exhausted by it. And I came home from college that summer and said, I'm done, I'm gonna become a teacher. And my mom pulled out those blueprints and kind of reminded me, like, this is who you are. It's in your bones. And I think it took me like a month of, fighting my mom on that. And then one night I remember staying up all night long watching PBS, This Old House, and realizing that I was avoiding the inevitable, and returned to college and completed my degree. So I always wanted to be a designer, and have never looked back. And actually, it's something that I tell my daughters, that if you can find the one thing that you would do even not to get paid and you'd still do it, that's what you should pursue as a career. And this is truly something that if I wasn't designing other people's homes and having the opportunity to do my own, I would be spending a lot of money just constantly moving and wanting to do more houses, because it's a sickness that most designers can relate to. We need to get out that creative energy somehow. And I feel really lucky that I realized it so young, and that my family supported me, and that I've been able to make a career of it. And lo and behold, it's been successful, and there's no Sunday scaries over here. I think it's important to note that as designers, there's a lot of pressure, obviously, for our own homes. And when I had the opportunity to build this house, why it was so important to me is, for years I had a fixer-upper, and it was exhausting, and I was having children and building a career, and there was always a project, and I never felt like I could really entertain. Of course, those in my close circle got to see behind, all the dust protection and the projects in motion. But I felt really it felt like if anyone I'd invite over, they were going to be judging me at some level because I'm a designer, because my project of a house was always in motion. And getting to build this house has really been a wonderful shift in that. I feel at liberty and always want people to come over, and I don't feel the need to do anything to my house. Of course, I will, and I'm sure I freshen things up a little bit more, but even just when people stop by, it's such a wonderful thing to be able to welcome people into my home after years of kind of feeling like, don't look at that, it's gonna happen later, and oh, don't go over there. There's a nail that's loose. Finally getting a house that was done, I don't take lightly. And I also think it's important to know that building a home in an older neighborhood is what I consider a responsibility, and it's a privilege. And I'm humbled that we had the opportunity to build this house for our family. And it's not lost on me that just like I was entering houses that were over 100 years old and swinging hammers at them and finding, the Dr. Pepper hidden in the framing, that's gonna happen here someday. And I knew that what I was doing in this neighborhood was making a mark. So it was really important to me every step of the way that we honored the neighborhood, that we were respectful to what was here before us, that we took great care of this opportunity. And I, as a designer and somebody who loves history and loves old homes, not that people should have to be, refrained from expressing themselves through architecture, but I do think when you live in an old neighborhood and you look out your windows and you choose an old neighborhood because you want to look through those windows and see beautiful old homes, remember that somebody has to look back at you. They have to look back in your direction. So maybe just be a little more conscious of that as we move forward and people keep building and space keeps becoming such a high necessity. Think about that somebody has to look at you as well and choose where you want to live based on that. So back through leaving the girls' wing, which is a very generous word, you have our bedroom, which is at sort of the top of the stairs. And this room, I like to take a nap. I love a nap. I don't get to do it very often, but if it's raining, like the first place that you're going to find me is in bed. And so I sort of took that energy into this bedroom and I wanted it to feel like a rainy day nap. And the walls and the ceiling, because of the architecture, we didn't have an opportunity to delineate ceilings from walls, which often you'll do with crown molding. But because we have the detail at the back of the house with the roof line, the walls and the ceiling are all this murky blue gray color, which again, just definitely feels like a big rain cloud. And then to offset it, we added the rust tones to just lighten the space, but keep it a little more serious. The bed is a restoration hardware bed. I always wanted a canopy, but I had it reupholstered in a Schumacher fabric. And you'll see that fabric repeated on the reading lamps and the bolster, and even the mattress box spring cover on the bed is all that same fabric. I do that a lot in design, repeat the same fabric over and over again. That's sort of a Southern detail. We do it a lot at Kipling House. And then some other beautiful jasper fabrics on the bed, and rose Tarlo fabric on the lampshades here and also on the bench, again, repeating. A little kind of note about the nightstands is incredibly functional. While they're beautiful, they have a stone top, which is wonderful for me because every night I bring a glass of water to bed and I don't have to think about a coaster. So that's a bonus. And then some of the artwork in the room, a piece that was gifted to me by Mercerie, which is my partner at Kipling House, a lovely piece. And then a vintage piece that I found in a basement of a yard sale. And then on the opposite wall, this was kind of one of those moments where when you're designing a house, this is not ideal to have a big wall without any furniture on it. So to combat that idea, I did a grouping of paintings that started with these two prints, which were from a church sale that I had reframed. And then the rest of these were from an artist that did postcards. They're like real postcards that he hand painted of birds. And I mean, I think it's like 50% of designers love birds, 50% hate them. I'm in the love category. You see a lot of them in my house. And then we do have a TV in here, but it does have a pretty frame around it. So TV, we do. There's a lot of love on the spectrum on that TV. And then off of our bedroom, I'll take you into the bathroom. So into our bathroom, again, this was a privilege of getting to build a house, is that we finally had a master bathroom. I shared one bathroom with all of my people in our previous home. So the fact that we have a master bathroom is quite a treat. It is not large. As many of the spaces in our house, nothing feels too large. I do feel like all the spaces are appropriate, and this one is wonderful in the scale, I think. Very much the design for this room started again with that play on the lattice motif on the flooring. So this is just a combination of marbles laid out in this lattice pattern, which I love. And that blue-gray then speaks to the color of the bedroom and the adjacent room. Because we did not have the crown molding again, the back of the house has all of these dormers. So no crown molding on the ceiling. So whatever I did on the walls needed to come up and over. And I loved this Sanderson wallpaper. It's become almost a classic at this point. But I had never seen it done in this white color. And I loved it in that it felt like this shadowed, dappled tree top energy. And it's very subtle. You have to almost look for it. But due to my aversion to drywall, it was the perfect answer. The chests were designed to look like Swedish antiques, again, in this sort of murky color that you see down in the kitchen, but a little dialed up. And then really cool hardware that I had made by a vendor from Etsy. I love the big back plates, which this was not planned, but I appreciate now that back plate. I have so much stuff on my hands from getting ready in the morning. A back plate is a wonderful thing to have when you have product on your hand. And then just little kind of detail here, hidden hardware, so that you don't have to put a lot of hardware on it, but I still wanted to access this space. So really love this bathroom. Again, we don't have recessed cans in this house. I think we have a total of 7. 2 of them are in here because I needed to work with an angled pitch and needed the light to put on makeup. So we have a lovely amount of light in here with the natural light in the windows, the sconces at the mirror, and then a single can above. And then just these 2 little fun pendants hanging hanging above, again, to feel, there's a little bit of a Parisian energy that you see throughout the house. And those felt a little Parisian to me. And then a last detail just to mention, when we're designing through things, I wanted the shower to feel like the casing. So designed the sort of shower jamb around the casing of the house as well. So off of my closet is an access to the laundry room in the house, which I had mentioned is my favorite room in the house, on the 2nd floor. So in the laundry room, I have a lot of wonderful bells and whistles, starting with this drying rack. This is by a company called Dry Away, who is actually based in Wisconsin. Such a genius idea to have. If you have daughters, you know that you cannot dry anything. It all has to be air dried. This is the most wonderful system. I can't say enough about it. So everyone should put these in their houses, but we have this awesome drying rack. And then obviously we have a pair of washer and dryers. I love this detail also in that we left a space under the dryers just so I can put the baskets and put them away. And that's because when it's Sunday, which is laundry day here in the house, there's so much clothes on the floor. Each of these spaces, I can kick 2 baskets, so I can get 4 loads of dirty laundry that nobody sees. And I kick them underneath, and then I do my laundry, and then they're just there for the week, which is such wonderful planning. And then we have simple things, of course, the laundry sink, which is now the puppy's bathtub. And I did this really fun detail. We added a skirt underneath to hide the garbage can and the plumbing. And then I had it made into an ironing cover. This is fabric by Jasper. Again, another favorite that was in the drawer that I pulled out for the house. And I couldn't just have an ironing board. I needed to have an ironing board in Jasper fabric. So my amazing workroom made me an ironing cover in the same fabric, and I should be patenting that idea and start selling them. So stay tuned. I'm not, but it's a good idea. And then we also added this tile backsplash, just a little bit of a graphic moment in the room. Not that it's ever really going to get wet because we're not even splashing that much in here, but again, graphic moment. And then some sweet little cafe curtains to add another layer to the space. And this room is just, it's highly functional. It has, 2 windows is such a gift, and it's got all of the things I need. I can hide in this cabinet, it's like all of the batteries and the light bulbs and the pure organization for me. And the other thing I want to note, that if you have a Costco membership and you don't know what to do, where you're going to put it, you do deep cabinets so that you can hide this kind of stuff. I mean, where else does that stuff go? That goes on top of your washer and dryer. So I love this room. It's incredibly functional, and any space that can get you to do laundry is a win. So favorite room. So with the materials selections of the house, designing the casing on all of the trim for the windows and doors, the absence of recessed cans, those were all details, again, to try to make this feel old. And which is the best thing I've ever done when people come into the house and say, when did you do the remodel? That was all the goal. So I love all the details that we put into this house that really trick the eye. And the floor is no exception. It's worth mentioning. These are white oak. And what's special about them, obviously they're wider, which most people are kind of doing these days. But what we did to these floors, which is really unique, is we had them hand chiseled. So every single floorboard in this house was hand chiseled to look like it had been worn over time. And that's why you don't have that crisp new house kind of wood flooring feel. These really do feel like they were reclaimed. Ideally we're telling the story that they've been here for a long time, but they look like the quality of a reclaimed floor. But that's just kind of the extra knowledge of like working with your vendors and asking questions. And our hardwood flooring rep from River City Hardwoods, he just kind of worked with me and said, yeah, we can do that. We can chisel them. We can make them look old. And the other thing we did to them is we put on a completely matte top coat. So it looks like they've been worn over time, that there's no sheen left because they've been so worn. So this is a detail that you don't realize you're noticing, but you're absolutely feeling. And it's worth asking extra questions to kind of get the help of your subs. In this case, they were incredibly helpful to drive home that story of an old house. So off of the kitchen sort of mudroom space is the entrance to our veranda. This was something that was a non-negotiable for me when I was designing the house. Again, being from the South, the veranda is very much the norm, but not the norm here in Minnesota. So a lot of people have screen porches because we do have our fair share of mosquitoes, but I was willing to fight that. And actually it hasn't been a problem, but I love the idea of a covered space. Our previous home, we had a lovely deck, but when it was raining, it just became not available. So I love that we can come out here when it's raining, which is a lovely time to be outside, and have a fan going. We have a lot of meals out here. Actually, any meal in the summer and spring, and as long as we can into the fall, we'll be outside. So it's an extension. It's a dining room when we have guests over, and then we sort of have this living space, which again, love to be out here in the evenings. The pillars are kind of a fun story. My parents have a home here that we spent summers at. That's kind of how this Southern girl ended up in Minnesota. We had a summer home here in Minnesota, and the pillars are from their 1906 home, which is actually quite close to here, that were on the front porch. And when they had to do some remodel work, because they are in the fixer-upper, those columns came down from the porch, and they were sitting in my mom's attic for years and years. And we were lucky enough to bring them out here. I just love the kind of spirit that those bring to this new space. I like the antiquity of them. We stripped them down, so took off all the layers, 100 and some years of worth of paint off of those. You can see the original green that came through. That was the trim color that then was painted a gray and then a cream. So I love the layers that are on that, and it's fun to think that those were on the same porch that I was rocked on as a baby. It's really fun to see that on my house when here I am with my babies. So we love this outdoor space. It's really added to the function of our home. I should mention the flooring, which is just concrete. And this was the reality of, again, building a house when you do not have several millions of dollars. We needed a place to save, and this is where it got. So we planned for bluestone out here, which we do have at the front door. But back in this space, I embraced the concrete after a trip to LA. There's a showroom that did this sort of painted concrete pattern. And I thought, well, that is really smart. So we just painted on the concrete with an outdoor paint product. My husband and I, during construction, came over on the weekends, taped this out. There may have been a few arguments during that process, but we got through it. We may have had to do it more than twice because I wasn't happy with the first color. But I love the way it turned out. You know, taking something that we needed the concrete, that was the substrate of the veranda, but by painting a pattern, again, the sort of checkerboard lattice coming into play, just a great way to create an opportunity out of an inexpensive material. And then you'll see on the millwork of the veranda, again, the lattice, again, harkening back, you see that on other spots on the house, on the exterior, and of course on the interior. I love it here because they're kind of like a privacy screen implied, but architecturally, they're just so interesting to the space. And then the last thing to note is the blue ceiling, which is on both the front door and the back door. That's that haint blue that you see in Charleston. A note to my southern roots. So love this veranda space, and I'm so glad that it became part of our programming in the project. So over here is what we lovingly call the garden shed, and we call it that because when we were building the house, I had the idea that I really wanted for my girls to have sort of a playhouse. I grew up with a playhouse. It was what I consider to be a gift from my parents. It was, you know, that space to create and feel sort of like your own home as a child, your own environment. And I really wanted my girls to have that. So we decided to do what is a garden shed in theory through Hilbert Collections. And they are a wonderful company based out of Pennsylvania. And what's so cool is you work with the owner to design exactly what you want, and it comes completely intact. So this shed showed up on a truck that had driven from Pennsylvania and was put down on our property, which was such a fantastic experience. And the girls, they had to know about this. So as much as I wanted it to be a surprise, they had to know because they saw it coming. So we told the story that it was the garden shed and that it was for the lawnmowers and for Dad's tools because my husband does all the landscaping. So it came onto the property and we immediately put paper on the windows so they couldn't look through. And then we kind of got to work on the inside. So if you see outside, we also have these darling garden cloches, which are usable. We are growing right now. What do we have? Some peppers and zucchinis. These were, I designed these and had these made actually by my husband's coworker who was dabbling with attorney by day and woodworker by night. So had these really fun cloches made. And then if you come into the garden shed, it's the same color package, exactly the same cedar shake, our front door color. So it's like a mini version of our own home. And this is Taylor Swift headquarters. So in this space, I designed this based on the Glensheen Mansion, which is a mansion on the Lake Superior coast line in Duluth, Minnesota. And it was a very cool mansion that my mom took me to as a child. And I, again, was inspired. I love historic homes, obviously. I designed my kitchen after it. And the Glensheen was actually the first historic mansion that I toured as a child. And in that mansion was a breakfast room that very much spoke to how this developed as well. It had these really cool green walls and a very graphic black and white floor. And in my memory, it was just kind of a magical space. And so I sought to recreate that for my daughters. And they did not know about this. It arrived on the lot. My husband and I spent weekends painting the rafters in here. It's a Farrow paint. And the floor cloth, which is a floor cloth, it's a rug. This was done by an Etsy vendor. So I designed it to look like a tile that I really liked. But it's a floor cloth, which is a rug that is very historic in nature. In the days of sailing, the women would take down the old sails from their husbands' ships, and that were kind of retired sails, had rips or whatnot. And they would paint designs on those sails, and then they would lacquer them in layers and layers of today's basically polyurethane. And they were used as floor coverings. And so I loved the idea of using that in here because it's incredibly durable. We truly do. I can come in here using a hose and take care of it. And I wanted them to have a space that, you know, as much as I'd like to pretend I'm like cool mom and I'm going to let them like do whatever they want in their house, no, there's limits. So this is a place I didn't want to have to worry about it. The floor cloth is amazing. It's such a great answer to getting something interesting but incredibly durable. This is also something they had asked for every room. You know, every kid wanted not only the like furry beanbag, they all wanted a swing, which I kept saying no to. So this was my opportunity to give them that swing. And they come in here with their girlfriends. We also have on the opposite side of the room, this is from an old church pew. My mother is very much who has nurtured and supported me as a designer. And she has her own neuroses as well. And her demons, and those demons are just like mine. We collect things and antiques, and she had a church pew. And when we were doing the project, I kept saying, I want to have an art table for the kids, but these pieces of lumber are so expensive. I'm not going to spend that much on an art table. It's just going to get trashed. Lo and behold, in her attic, she had a church pew. So this is the old church pew that they would have had all of, the music in. And I love it because now it's the girls' art space, which clearly I didn't check before today's filming because it's a mess. But I love that. This is what this room is for. I mean, lava lamps and swings and all the things I said no to in the house, they can come out here. I mean, even like their artwork, which, oh my God, their artwork is falling off the wall. Literally, this is the reality. Like the artwork is falling off the wall. That's because they're having such a good time in here. But I love that this space is theirs. It was really special to give this to them as a surprise. So when they came to the house and got to see their rooms for the first time, we came out here to show them the lawnmowers and had this kind of special space for them. So very much, I feel grateful to have been able to give them that. As a kid who moved around a lot, my family always could create any home out of any house. We lived in Saudi Arabia. We lived in Georgia. I lived in Chicago. I lived now in a few homes here as an adult. And I think home is obviously where the people around you are the ones that are closest to you. It's the place that no matter how good the hotel is, it's better to get back to. And it's the place that when I'm on vacation and in the most incredible places and surrounded by beautiful things, like there's nothing like getting home and getting in my bed and my kids feeling comfortable in their spaces and just that smell when we walk in the door when we've been gone for a long time, like all of those things feel like home.
Thanks for watching. Be sure to go to homeworthy.com for exclusive content, shopping guides, and so much more.